In this lesson, we're going to briefly look at how to organize certain resources that would make your use of AI to be more impactful. So it's going to be something very straightforward. It's all about organizing because the ideal modern professional already has their own way of working. If AI never existed, how do you do your work now? You obviously would be using a folder structure. You would have a directory, you have a shared drive, you have a repository, and all of that will have tiered level folders, and all of them have various things that you do repetitively. Say you're an operational manager, every month you definitely will be getting reports on what went wrong the whole month, what was good, what key CSATs or what key metrics are you going to report on, and all that. So you probably have a folder saying reports, and in that folder you'd have the month, say January, and in that January folder you probably have a PowerPoint or whatever for each of the key metric that you're reporting on. So like every professional has that kind of understanding of how foldering structure works. So we'll have a look at how all that can be adapted to using AI, and then how that can be organized in a way that it can be then integrated in your line of work. But before that, let's just double check. I would always be saying this all the time. When you're using AI, have this at the back of your mind. Whenever you use AI, you always have to engage the human element to always review and then have a final professional output polished in a way that you see fit before you use it. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for that data. And just bear in mind that AI helps professionals to work faster, and you're always going to be the last point of contact when it comes to responsibility on its output. And never rely on AI on things that are very sensitive, like legal decisions or things to do with employment or HR decisions or finance approvals. You can use it as a guide to do your analysis, but it shouldn't be based on AI's judgments that you take an action to say, oh, AI says this is how you should do it, so that means you're going to do it. No, you need to always have your own compliance or your way of measuring things down as a human, and then you just use AI to catalyze how you arrive at that. Okay. In terms of using AI in the modern workspace, okay, just explained previously about the foldering structure where you have a top level folder, and everybody does that. Everybody uses that on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, regardless of whatever employment you're in. You always have a place that you normally would save your document, and you always have a place that you always go back and retrieve a previous document, only to iterate it to do a new one, right? It's the same analogy that we're going to use when it comes to organizing your approach to using AI. So we all know that to use AI, you need to open, say, ChatGPT and then type in a prompt. And in the prompt, you have a long conversation about whatever you're trying to achieve. And at the end, you're going to arrive at a goal, a final output that you think, okay, this is it. This is what I needed. And it's never going to be a single goal. So what if all the issues that you had during the whole conversation and you ironed them all out until you got to that final piece of output that you think this is it? All the problems that it had and you fix it one by one until you got to the very end of the output. What if you can put all of that together into a body of text that you can use the following day, because it's the same thing that you're going to do. That brings us to the concept or the phrase reusing good prompts. So you've put all the work in and you've been able to do something successfully. Why do you have to start over again the next time you're trying to do the same thing? Are you going to just start by chatting again, typing the same questions, and then you're going to have a debate with AI all until you get the final output again? That slows you down. So having a repository of all the repeatable work that you do that you use AI to do, have it all in a very concrete prompt, and then the next day you just copy that whole prompt into the chat, you'd realize that it would automatically not do all those mistakes that you had to make the conversation long. It would just give you bang on what you're looking for. So a common beginner mistake is you're always starting from scratch every time. So if you realize that and then you try to change the mindset, then you're on a path to start using AI in a more responsible and a more practical way that push your productivity. You're always rewriting prompts repeatedly, and you're having inconsistent outputs. You're wasting time, and you're forgetting how good prompts work. So when it comes to how people use AI in now, what they do is they just have a master prompt for a specific task and then they save it. When I say save it, you're not saving it in the AI. No, no, no. It's just a matter of copying and pasting. So whatever prompts at the end of that conversation, you can actually ask it to give you a prompt to say, so say I wake up next morning and I come back to work again and I'm going to go through all this again. And I don't want to go through this all these questions that I asked you before we arrived at this. Can you give me a detailed prompt to give back to yourself so that it would quickly just give me this output? The model will give you. It will give it to you at the end of the conversation. And then you can just copy and paste that into something like a Word document and you just save it. And then the next morning, all you have to do is open that Word document and then copy from it and into a new chat and then do that day's work. So it's more like saving, reusing, refine, improve, kind of like that's how, good workflows are. So once you have a repository of all those prompts, it's made your life easier. So what you be using like 3 or 4 hours in a day to do just a single piece of report, you probably now just do it in 10 minutes because you know the questions you're going to be asking. Everything is all into one prompt, and you just pasted it. Now, some of the reusable prompts, they fall between so many categories. And these are just three that I just decided to take note of. Like, you'd be replying a lot of emails when you're at work. You would be generating a lot of reports when you're at work. You probably be having a lot of meetings and you need to take notes from those meetings. Yeah, some of these meeting platforms like Teams obviously gives you an option to have a meeting recap and all that. Yeah, that's some of those are already coded into some of those resources like Teams. So if you know that these things happen repetitively and you always go back to AI and then you start from scratch and then you're trying to piece things together to get an output, why don't you just maybe whenever you do it once for the first time, save them and then create a new folder, create a folder called email prompts because you know you're going to be doing a lot of emails and these are the kinds of emails that come on a day-to-day basis. What if you give it a specific way that you want those emails to be replied more of the time? I don't want to be coming back to a new chat and then copying and pasting email history and then we're chatting away just to get a proper reply. Whereas I already have a prompt that I can just copy and paste and then give it a context and then it gives me a reply and then boom, we're gone. So I can compile all of that into a simple folder with a lot of text documents or Word documents to say, okay, these are all my email prompts because I know I respond to these emails every week. That's a reusable prompt. The same for reports. I create this weekly report every day or every week. And this is how I normally would be starting from scratch. I'm now going to be importing this previous report and I'll give it more additional information to say this is what happened this week. I want you to give me the report in this format. I want it to be in bullets. I need a graph at the end. And then at the end, I want you to give me a PDF. So that's a whole long conversation. But you can compile all that into one master prompt and then you attach whatever reference files you need to attach and then you get that report. So that saves you like hours of work. Ideally, if you're not using AI, you have to manually do all that. You have to now read a report. You have to now find out what the current information is, read it, get your own insight of it, and then you go to a new blank document or you just copy and paste the previous one and then just make the changes. That's all manual, yeah. But the AI approach now, if you have a prompt with all the steps that you normally would have done, and then you put it all into a single master prompt, then it makes work easier. So that's how you create reusable prompt categories. Now, now that you have that, what are some of the ways to save these prompts? Like I said, ideally you use a text document like a notepad or a Word document, or you can use OneNote, or you can just leave them in ChatGPT save chats. If you have the recent chat section that I showed you on the left, you can just leave all of that. For instance, if I go back to this chat, so if I have these two, I'll leave it as a save chat, and then I can make sure that whenever I come back, I can always come back to it. That's a save chat. But again, you can also create a Word document. You can just open Word. All you have to do is to tell the model to give you, if I were to prompt this all over again, and I don't want us to go through all the gremlins, what master prompt can I use for next time? Speed things up. It doesn't really have enough context, but let me just see if you can give me a master prompt. Yeah. So it's giving me a master prompt based on what we've discussed here. And I think we only discussed about what kinds of reports it can do. And I told it that I want PDF always. And I told it to keep some things to memory about the context of our company. Now, it's letting me know that this is what I can use a reasonable prompt. So it's telling me this is the master prompt. So if I want to have this conversation all over again, I don't have to start again from scratch and be asking, what do you know about this and all that. If I just copy this prompt, act as my workplace, and then it gives me the context, assume I work at Brightspark, and then report and preferences. Keep all reports editable, do not finalize report, and then the writing style, I think it's getting all of these from my memory, and then the work, and then I will now provide my notes and requests, and then all of that I can just put in whatever context I want to work on that day after this colon. So if I copy this, all I need to do is make sure that I create a Word document. So I open Word, say this is Word, and I paste that. Then I can save this as a prompt. So let's say I want to save this at document prompt library. And let's say I want to just save it here as an example. Let me just save it here as an example. Let me go to prompt documents. I will call this as my sample prompts. Right? I'm just going to save it here. So I have that saved. So it means the next time I want to have a conversation about this again, all I need to do is to go into my where I saved it at and then copy all of this. So when I copy all of this, and I go to my chat, let's say I go to a new chat and I paste that. There is my prompt. And then I'll just put in whatever I need to put in for whatever I'm working on for that current whatever. And then when I send, it's not going to take me through all that. It's not really accurate, but I just want to give you, I was just trying to demonstrate the flow of how a reusable prompt is saved and used. Yeah, so I'm just going to go back to the whiteboard. Yeah, so you can save your prompts to any of these apps, and all you have to do is to have a proper folding structure, which I'll show you in a second. And then that's how you're being proactive. That's how you're being efficient. Now, after that, you'd realize that how are the prompts set up? If you look at that prompt that we just looked at there, it gave a role, it gave a context, it gave a goal, a tone, and an output format. I'm going to go back to that to just double check what that was. So if I go back to ChatGPT, and I'm just going to come out of this and go back here. When you go back to this prompt, you can see it gave us a context, it gave us a goal, and it gave us some customization on how we want things to be done and how we want the output to be. So that makes up a proper prompt. So this is a master prompt. So you realize that this prompt is not just a simple prompt that says summarize this text for me or whatever. It's well detailed. It's very long and it's instructional, and it's not going to give the model any excuse to have it wrong. Even though sometimes you do, and you always have to fact check that. So that's how you repeat the cycle, and you come up with reusable prompts and come up with a productive way of using ChatGPT for the workplace. Now, based on that, we have something that we wanted to just double check with you for you to understand. Now, you understand that whenever you are prompting, you always have to have a prompt, and then you always have to give it some context. Some of these contexts would be your emails, it could be your rough notes, it could be any source of documentation, anything that you're working on. It could be the previous week's report and all of that. That's how you come up with a whole workflow. That's what I call a workflow. So every week you do something repetitive. What makes that repetitive makes it a flow. So you always start from somewhere, you pick something previous, or you pick some context, and then you give it a prompt, you see the output, you refine, and then you get a final output, and then you forward it on to wherever you need to do, or whatever you need to use that output to do. And when it comes to mastering this whole, reusable prompts, what I would suggest is to have a repository of like prompts. So what I'll call a prompt library. So when I have a look at my Finder, I'm going to just quickly show you what a prompt library is. So if I minimize this and I go to my Finder, so I have this prompt library. So in my documents, I have a folder called prompt library. And in my prompt library, I have different folders. Now, this is some of the course materials that you all have access to, but this is just to give you an example of what a prompt library is. So these are prompts that I would be copying and pasting repetitively. So let's say I was in management and I would always be, no, let's say I'm in the operations, and I know every week I give a process delay update. So this is a sample master prompt. So I have this prompt here, and it has all the specifics on how the prompt to be used. And if I copy this into chat, the chat immediately knows exactly what I'm trying to get out of it. And that's because it's something I do every week. And I need to make sure that I'm consistent so that I can get the output that I want without wasting any much time. So then this now becomes my foundation. If anything changes, all I have to do is make sure that I tweak this. Now, if you pay attention to the prompt as well, you see that it's more like a template. So because the prompt is to do with something that I do repetitively, which is to do with, say, for instance, process delay update, I need to come up with this prompt and contextualize it in my use case to make sure that I can get the output. So you can see there's certain things here that I'll have to modify. So the prompt is to help me to draft a clear update about a delay, why, the bottleneck, what disruption of service is triggered. And I have the context. I'm telling it that it should assume that it is an operations team lead at this company. And I want the tone to be calm, professional, direct. And I want the output to be very short and state what the cause is, the impact, and the next steps. And then I wanted to write a process delay update using the details below. And I would have to manually tell it what the issue is. I have to manually replace this with generalized things that are related to who is affected. I don't want to give away sensitive information. Current impact, cause unknown reason, what actions are being currently underway to mitigate against this delay, and when I think this could be finished. And I want the model to come up with that draft in this specific requirement. I need a tone to be calm and professional, and then obviously with the model, it's with the prompt, it's letting me know what I need to change to make sure that this is adapted to my context. So then this becomes evergreen for that specific process. So if I copy this into a chat and then I replace whatever I need to replace, and I give it whatever context, whatever notes, whatever previous documents, or whatever past emails are anonymized, or whatever PDFs or whatever Word documents, anything related to this, then it's going to give me that, that whole output. And then I can send that email. I don't have to open a new chat and then ask it, I need your help to come up with a process delay update. It should be an email. And then I'm going to have a back and forth chat with it before we finally get to understanding how I want it to be before it would then give me that report. No, I'm not going to go through all that. That's time wasting. But then this is a reusable prompt. So based on your role, obviously, you're going to have this level of foldering structure where you have a prompt library and then you have all the things that you repetitively do that you need AI to help you with. Ideally, you're always going to start from just conversations, and at the end of those conversations, make sure it gives you a prompt that you can just copy and paste so you can use it the next day. Just save that prompt somewhere in your Finder. Now, I'm using a MacBook. That's why this is how my foldering system is. Ideally, if you're using a Windows, you use the File Explorer, and then you can save it to your document or wherever. You can save it to your OneDrive, wherever you can easily access it. So these are how modern professionals leverage the use of AI currently when they're using ChatGPT. They have reusable prompts and they copy and paste as and when they need them. They don't have to always start from scratch and chatting away with an AI agent or a ChatGPT chat conversation to get through all of this. So with that concluded, we would then now proceed to the other sections where we start actually trying some of these, how to use some of these. I'll see you in the next lesson.